Right, we're ready.
Right, okay.
No
Well,
recording. Please be careful of the language used.
Yeah, yes. So be careful what you say if you think you're on mute and then discover that you're not, which
You won't have to swear.
I've experienced other people do that, encounter that problem.
Yeah.
I need 11,000 more votes.
Okay, right. First of all, just to welcome you all to the January meeting. Thank you all for coming along tonight. By the looks of it, we'll be having yet more Zoom meetings in the future because it doesn't look like we're going to be able to meet in person for some time to come. So we'll do our best with them, and we've discovered some interesting ways of communicating with Zoom as well. So I think when we do get back to meeting in person, then I think we should also continue to use Zoom where we can do. Secondly, sadly got a report that one of our founder members, Sheila Gascoigne, passed away a month ago, and Sheila was one of the people who helped set up the History Society, and she lived in Sunnyside. She used to tell me about the stories about how she was raised in the Marquis of Granby pub down on Watergate Bank. Sorry, not Watergate Bank, it's just up from Watergate Bank, opposite Baker's Bank. She'd be enormously missed, and I think what I'd like to do at some point is to have some kind of event when we can meet in public to remember her, because I think she was, without her, I think it would have been quite challenging for the society to have got through its early years. Right. The final thing I want to mention is that we're going to try and have an AGM next month. So if we could have it at the start of the February meeting. So it's not an additional meeting, it's just, we'll just slot it into the start. We'll try and get the reports and so on done beforehand. But it's been a year and a half since we had an AGM, and obviously because of the pandemic, we couldn't really go ahead with it. But I felt it was now's the time to actually get this sorted, because I think we have an obligation to the members to make sure that it's an open and democratic society that we're involved in, and members need to receive the reports from the officers about the state of the organisation and how and what we as officers have been doing throughout the past year and a half as it is now. So we'll arrange that and organise that for the start of the next meeting. So in my best Chris Whitty style, I'm going to say to Alan, next slide, because we'll go to the presentation. Some of you might have seen a version of this before. This is based on a talk that I gave to the Society a few years ago, but I've revised it a little bit. Alan, if you could put it on the slideshow.
Yeah, doing it now, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, right. But basically, some of you may well know that I'm one of the local councillors here, and sadly for me, and my lack of a life, I've been on the council for over a third of a century now. And in that time, I've built up an enormous collection, literally thousands and thousands of photos that have been taken around the area, around Gateshead, particularly around Wickham and Sunnyside, for a newsletter that we do called Focus. And we, as a result of that, some years ago, I was able to put together a presentation about how the area has changed. Some of these are just small scale changes, others are very significant changes. But I did actually try to get rid of this photo that you're looking at now, which I tried to delete from the file to revise it, and unfortunately I couldn't remove this photo. So when I first gave this presentation, this was this is a photograph of me, and I was using it as a bit of a joke about how I seem to have spent the whole of my life on the council. And this photograph was taken 6 months before I was elected. But unfortunately, we're not able to get rid of this photograph, so we're stuck with it. So that is me with my sucking on something. I think on the beach at Tynemouth in the pram. So if we can do a Chris Whitty style to move on to the next slide, please, Alan.
All right, hang on. Right, got it. Yeah.
Right, okay. One of the biggest changes that we have had in terms of just the area or the landscape has been the regeneration of the Watergate area, the Watergate pit area. And I don't know how many of you ever visited Watergate pit heaps, but I knew them very well because I used to live at Concert Road at Lobley Hill, and I went to Wickham, what was then Wickham Comprehensive, is now Wickham, just straight Wickham School, and I used to walk through Washingwell Woods and through the pit yard every day to go to school. And I decided at some point to get some photos of the state of the area, and this was taken in 1993, in November 1993, and the pit heaps had filled in, had culverted the Blackburn Dean or Valley, I suppose you could call it. But there was part of it that was still exposed, part of the stream, and that's me standing next to it. That is me with brunette hair rather than the white hair that I have now. So that was 27 years ago. Move on one, Alan.
Okay.
So that is the entrance to the second culvert, and that culvert went through to the bottom of Watergate Bank. But you can see this embankment around it. This is all slag from the Watergate pit. And I remember back in 1987 when I was first elected, I decided one of my things that I was going to try and achieve was to get that area regenerated and get rid of the old pit heaps. And in the end, we did actually manage to do it, but it was more by accident than by design, because the pit heaps caught fire. And one of the reasons why they were able to burn so thoroughly was because about 10% of the waste there was coal, and the culvert drew oxygen through, so it fed the fire. And when they did some borings and took the temperature of the fire and found that it was burning at 1,000 degrees centigrade. So it was a major operation to be able to put that fire out, because it was burning so wide, the burn in it was so widespread that you were getting dirty fumes coming off from all sorts of different parts of it. It looked like a scene from a sort of 1970s Doctor Who program, where the stink from it was pretty intense as well. So the council was able to get some grants to be able to effectively dig out all the slag and the coal, and they part paid for the project by extracting that 10% that was coal, and that was sold, and the rest of the slag was laid out around the area on the ground. So it increased the ground level of what eventually became Watergate Park. So if you jump on to the next one, Alan. Yeah. So that was taken in 1987. So this was before the pit heaps caught fire, but it's taken from where the Roman fort was. So it's the road that runs from the Pitman Steps right away along to Wickham Highway, near to where the police station is, and that's the area where the Roman fort would have been. But you can see in the centre of that picture the pit heaps, and at some point the coal board had tried to plant it over with silver birch trees. Of course, they all got destroyed by the fire, but all that area has now completely been cleared up. So you just jump along another one, Alan. So that's what it is now, or this is actually 2 years ago. They created the lake at the park, and interestingly, the park, before that lake was formed, and before anybody had thought of Watergate Park ever existing, that area did flood in the middle of in the 1970s, and it's created a huge lake in the middle of the field, and effectively what was happening was that the railway line was acting as a dam to the streams that were in that area, and it literally just, at the end of the drought back in '76, that whole area flooded. When we got that really heavy downpour that ended the drought, that whole area flooded. So there is actually a precedent for the lake being there. Did you jump on another one, Alan? So again, that's another shot of it, looking towards Washingwell Woods, and you might just be able to make out there's a bridge there, and that was just demolished in the last couple of weeks because it was dangerous. Next one, Alan. Okay, right. This is my little joke. Interestingly, in September, there was filming taking part in Watergate Park for the program Vera, which I've got to confess I've only ever watched a handful of times, but it's always filmed in different parts of the Northeast, and everybody who watches it from the Northeast spends all their time watching the program to see the areas that they recognize. So in a few months' time, there'll be broadcasting program set in, or at least partly set in Watergate Park, where I think that they find a body. But I went along and took some photos of the teams that were there, and unfortunately I wasn't able to see the Land Rover that Vera drives, and so sad for me, because I drive on my small island we have a Land Rover Defender, a bit older than Vera's, and an awful lot more rust on it as well. But I was never able to get to see the Land Rover. Okay, Alan, next one. Right, this was taken back in 1987, and this is actually. Anybody has a guess as to where this was?
It's Derwent Half Park. It's Leighton Mill Crocomans.
That's right. Thanks, David. Yep. So, Alan, if you just.
Leighton Mill.
Yep. So if you just move it along one. Yep. So it's the Derwent Half Coke Works.
Yeah.
After it was closed, and an awful lot of old kit was just abandoned there, and it was sort of part of the sort of gradual decline of some of the very heavily polluting old industries in the area. Jump along another one, Alan.
Oops, lost me.
Yeah. So again, this was just as demolition was starting to take place, and they hadn't entirely decided what was going to happen to the site, but it was going to cost an awful lot of money to get it put right, and that was something that the council got involved with. So they took over the site and started to have the site cleared using derelict land grants from the government. So next one, Alan. Yeah, again, that's just a sort of different angle of the sort of same shot as before. So next one. Yeah, and again, that's this time with the Derwent River right in the shot as well, and of course this polluted land went right up to the course of the river. So next one. Yeah. Okay. So this is we've moved on 5 years, and all the old buildings have now been removed, and the reclamation work is underway. But if you look at this picture, you can see that there are there's sort of really thick plastic fabrics on the embankment there. And these were used to create basically a holding area into which all the most contaminated land and soil and waste was put into this holding area, and it was sealed because it was too poisonous and too toxic to remove from the site. I'm looking at a question about was it at Norwood? No, Norwood was another site that was cleared as well. So sorry if I said Norwood, I meant Derwenthof. So my apologies for that. The Norwood site was cleared for the garden festival, which I don't have any photos of in this presentation, but if you ask me nicely at some point in the future, I'll dig out the photos.
I think, Jonathan, I think the confusion comes from there was an engine and it had Norwood corking plant on it.
Ah,
A couple of photographs back.
Ah, right. Okay, right. I hadn't spotted that, but that photograph was taken on the Derwenthof site. So I would guess that a lot of equipment got moved around between the two sites because they both did the same, effectively the same work. So next shot.
Jonathan,
Yep.
that last site, it was nicknamed the coffin because it was like a coffin, like a grave, when it was cleared out. And like and sealed up. And Swalwell Junior's football fields are built on the top of that. So Swalwell
that's right.
is
on
top of that.
There's David, you're jumping the gun a bit because there is a photograph, a few photos of what the site's like now. But it was basically they had to seal all of this in because it was there was a danger if they didn't, it would leak into the river. But also it was just too poisonous and toxic to take it off the site, and there was just nowhere to take it to. So as with some areas of the Garden Festival site, the toxic waste is actually still there, sealed in underground. So, right, next slide. Oh, right, okay, so that thanks, Lee. I think he's saying that the old engine, so lost it there. The old engine is the Tanfield Railway graveyard. Ah, right, yeah, which I've visited many times. So it might be worth seeing, having a wander up there when we're allowed to, and see if we can spot it. So, right, again, this is just another shot of the Derwenthof Reclamation site back in 1992. So, looking up the valley towards Winlayton Mill. Right, next one, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, again, so they brought various bits of kit onto site to try and extract as much of the unpleasantries as possible. I think if you look at to the left of the picture, there's some booms over the pond there. So I think they ended up filtering a lot of the waste as well, because there's obviously a lot of water on the site, and that had to be extracted and cleaned as well. Next one. Yeah, again, so more sort of equipment. So next one. Right. Okay. So this is it's the then, and this is the now pictures, or now as in 2 years ago. But I'm not aware that anything's changed, particularly on the site, other than the new visitor centre has opened at Winlayton Mill. So next one, Alan. So yeah, this is the footpath through the site, through the park, which it would have been impossible to have walked that 25 years ago. So next one. Yeah, so that's the is that the cricket club or the football?
No, that's the football.
That's the football club. Yeah. That's where we had the presentation some 5 or 6 years ago about the butterfly bridge.
That's right.
So yeah, but of course, if you notice that's up a height, and the reason is because they had to effectively put a thick layer of rubble and soil and clay over that area to seal in all the toxic waste that's underneath it. So that's the reason why it's actually a bit of a height. So it's the next one. Ah, right. Anybody recognise this?
Butterfly Bridge.
Yes.
The old one.
Yeah, it's the one that got swept away in the floods that happened back in 2008, and it literally just picked up the bridge, the whole bridge, and carried it about, I think it must have been about 100 meters downriver, and just deposited on the edge, on its side, on the edge of the the river. So it obviously was one of the local landmarks. So there was a determination to get it replaced. So next picture. Yeah, so that's again another view of it. So if you move it along one more.
Jonathan,
Yeah,
Jonathan, just on the Butterfly Bridge there,
yeah.
it was the central pillar that was knocked out, and there the bridge actually fell and then was actually swept down the river. And that central pillar is still visible from the new bridge.
Ah, yes, that's right. Yes. You've got a better handle on this story than I have. No. So thanks for that. Right. But anyway, this was the flood that happened in 2008, and it was a huge downpour that happened on that one weekend, and obviously there was huge flooding at Blaydon Rugby Club. So that's how we ended up with those two cars going for a swim there. Moving on to the next one, Alan.
Yeah.
This was at Blackhall Mill on the same day, and I was actually up in Blackhall Mill taking photos. I'd planned to be up there anyway, so taking photos of other things, and I just thought, well, you know, it looks like the river is flooding. I might as well get some photos as well. And if you look at the right-hand side, that green embankment, that is that's a flood defence. It's raised land to stop the river from flooding over into the houses to the right there. And if that barrier hadn't been there, that flood defence hadn't been there, those houses would have been flooded. Yeah, David?
Jonathan, the last building on that terrace there is the local bakery that specialises in cakes, and it's an excellent bakery. You know, an excellent shop, that one. And it's very, very popular.
Oh, good. Well, the next time I'm up in Blackhall Mill, I'll pop in there.
It's a good one. It's worth a visit.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'll do that. Right. Okay. Now, next slide. Right. Okay. So this is Butterfly Bridge. Actually, in 2014, I took this on the day that we had the unveiling of the plaque, not the plaques, the information boards that we had about the Butterfly Bridge. So next question. Sorry, next slide. Oh, back one.
And then flat.
Yeah. So again, that's a bit of a better view of the bridge itself. So what actually it marks one of the most significant crossings from possibly from the early Roman times, but certainly from the medieval times, because this would have been one of the main routes north from Durham to Northumberland, bypassing Newcastle. So this is where the way the traffic would have come over, probably would have been through a ford to cross the river Derwent, but it was a really important crossing point, this.
And as Noel just said earlier, this is the first one, which is a single span bridge with no support in the middle.
Yeah.
Where previous bridges always had long jack support in the middle.
Yeah.
This is the single span bridge.
Yes. I think nowadays they're built like this because they're cheaper to build, and they can build them off site and just bring them in like a big Meccano set and drop it into place. It's a bit like the Millennium Bridge, the Gateshead Millennium Bridge, that was built off site and then brought in on a huge crane and just dropped into place. So, right.
Who funded that bridge, Jonathan?
Sorry, David?
Who funded that bridge?
This one.
And I was never sure who footed the bill for it, because there was always an argument went on about, you know.
There's always argument about who should pay for what. To be honest, I have no idea who paid for it, and I suspect it was probably grant funded. So the council would have paid for it, but on the basis of a grant from the government. But I can't say for certain. I don't know.
Just the point that David was making about the argument about the bridge. The argument was that Gateshead didn't have any intention of replacing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, the Gateshead Council wanted to do away with the right of way, and they fenced it all off. But however,
Yeah, well, it's all open now, so you can use it now. Even under COVID pandemic lockdowns, you can still use it. So, Lee said the crane for the Millennium Bridge was the oh, hold on, I've lost my.
Oh, I'm gonna
Asian Hercules.
Yeah,
I've got
Asian Hercules. Yeah,
Asian Hercules. Yeah. Asian Hercules too.
the Asian Hercules.
Yeah.
2, maybe. Yep, maybe
Yeah.
2.
Yeah. So the bridge was a bit late in being opened because the Millennium Bridge, but it was opened in 2002. And one of these days, I must dust down the video that I shot on the day of the official opening, because it was that the Queen came along to do the opening and filmed all of it. So at some point, I've got a drawer of old videotapes, little video camera tapes, which on there is the opening of the bridge. So I must dig it out, and we'll use that one at some point for a talk. Right. Okay. Next slide. Right. Anybody recognise where this is? Was rather.
Outside Road.
Yep. It's the old garage, the BP garage. Next slide, Alan. Yep. And that's it. Actually, 2 years later, and I think it might have actually been closed at that point.
Yeah.
You can see the it looks quite tatty at that point. And when I was at Wickham Comprehensive in the sixth form, we used to quite a few of us had jobs at local garages serving petrol, because it was in the days where you'd actually come out and serve the customer rather than let them serve themselves. And that garage, the Fellside garage, paid far better pay than all the other garages in the area. And I was at the garage that paid the least pay, which was Garvin and Reed's in Sunnyside. But all these garages are gone now because they were really expensive to maintain, and also the standards that they had to abide by had increased significantly. So it wasn't worthwhile for a lot of them to be kept open. So a lot of them went. And the Fellside Garage one became, and if you press the next slide, Alan, so it's Fellside Court. I think it's quite a number of flats on there. Yeah, good point. Cheap supermarket fuel as well, which is sold at cost price without a profit. I don't know how Morrison's managed to sell it so cheap, but thank you anyway. Right, so this is Fellside Court now, where the garage was previously. So, right, next slide. Okay, right. This may just look like an indiscriminate bit of concrete with a rusty rod going through the middle of it, but does anybody know what it is? Why it's significant?
Dunstan Flats?
Oh, the soap works, huh?
No.
The Rocket?
No.
The soap
it's
works?
Actually, I'll put you out your miseries. It's actually the Get Carter car park.
Oh, that.
Yeah. But
Alan, forgotten all about it.
Yeah, Alan, if you go back to that first slide a moment ago.
No,
other way. Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the reasons why it eventually had to be demolished, it was demolished for a whole load of reasons, but one of them was that the whole building was unsafe. It was disintegrating. It was rotting from inside, and all this concrete was reinforced with these steel bars, and the water had got in through the concrete into those steel bars, and they were expanding in the damp and rusting, and therefore they were causing the concrete around them to splinter off. And there's absolutely no way that this building could be saved. So that's one of the reasons why it actually had to be pulled down. Of course, there were other reasons as well. One of which was that building stood right in the middle of Gateshead, and it was actually it prevented that whole area from being redeveloped. And therefore, once they were able to get rid of the car park, they would then be able to redevelop the whole of that area. So if you move on to the next one, Alan.
Film's on tonight, by the way, Get Carter.
Oh, is that Alf Roberts gets chucked off?
Yes. Well, it's always been known as the Get Carter car park, and I think the only time that building at the top of it was ever used was in the Get Carter film, because nobody ever leased it. There were all sorts of plans to use it, but they never materialized. And in the end, they wouldn't actually allow people into that sort of rooftop building because it was so dangerous. Because it was you reckon that if you walked across the floor of it, you could have ended up going through it. But Alan, if you just go back to that last one,
yeah.
This photograph
Also, the Millennium Bridge there.
yes, that's the Millennium Bridge. But this photo was taken. I took loads and loads of them, and it was on a day when we had to get special permission to go into the car park, and it was all sort of heavily controlled as well. And so I applied. It was open for members of the public to go along with a keen interest in photography and local history and so on. So I wasn't there with my counsellor hat on. I was actually there with my historians and photographer hat on. But you can see, if you look down that column there, you can see the sort of white splodges as you go down, and that is the cement or the concrete sort of buckling and breaking away from the building. And that's one of the reasons, as I say, why it had to be demolished. But if you move on to the next one, Alan.
Okay.
So that's the building at the top. That was the what was going to be the restaurant in the Get Carter movie. Excellent views, incredible views of the surrounding area. But as I say, that part of the building was never used, and the car park itself, I think the top 4 floors were closed about I think at the end in the early 80s, and because there was just not enough demand for a car park of that size, and people did not like using it as well.
The pigeons loved it, Jonathan. The pigeons loved it. That was a home for the pigeons. It was the biggest pigeon cree in Gateshead.
Just one point, Jonathan. Just at the bottom of the photograph in the centre, looks like a keg, a canister of beer.
Ooh.
Does that mean that it was actually used for some form of reception or something?
Oh, I don't know. I hadn't spotted that before. Yeah, maybe
it might not look like a beer keg.
Yes.
It looks like a bin.
Maybe somebody was having secret raves on the top of the building. So. Right, okay. Alan, if you move on to the next one.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So again, this was taken. Yeah. This is a scene that you can't, a photograph you can't take now unless you have a drone, and it's of the interchange centre. But again, it's all the it was taken on that day back in 2008 when we were allowed up there, and you just had some absolutely incredible views out over Gateshead.
Oh, Jonathan, I'm just wondering. They built some flats there, didn't they? There's some flats there now, and I'm just wondering if that's got a similar view.
I don't think they're as high. I think they're the student accommodation.
Yeah.
It doesn't go as high as the Get Carter car park. Plus, they're further down the bank as well. So yeah, you get a bit of a view, but not quite what you got from the top of Get Carter. So you go to the next one, Alan.
Okay.
Again, so this is just sort of shots from the top of the building. So that was the walkway out to the lift. Okay, next one.
Can you put on mute, please? Whoever's there.
Right. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, again, that's the picture of the whole of the car park. Brutalist style, as Lee rightly points out. We had the other major brutalist style building was in Gateshead was the Rocket, and they've both gone now. But you can see how it dominated the landscape, and as I say, that as long as that car park remained, they were never going to be able to develop that area of Gateshead town centre. Same architects as well. I've forgotten his name. If you could,
someone wasn't it?
Yeah, it'll come to me in a minute, or if somebody could remind me.
The Victorians didn't have much, value for the future, did they, when they built things, Jonathan?
Well, there were things in the 60s which
better be futuristic.
I thought it was built by the Victorians.
Yeah, well, Owen Luder, thanks, Lee. Yeah, but they did build things in the 60s, which in their mind it was the sort of it was new, it was exciting, it was awful, but they only learned that after that it was awful after they built them. So
was it John Paulson? Was it John Paulson?
No, it was Owen Luder. He was the sort of the chief architect of the brutalist movement, and also built or designed the car park and the Rocket as well. So, Alan, if you take it on to the next one. So this is when it all started to be demolished. It got some great crowds coming along to watch it.
Remember celebrating.
Yeah. So it was quite interesting watching it coming down. Nobody seemed to shed a tear that it was going either. So, right, next one. Right, okay. It looks a bit slimmed down, but this was with half the car park already gone. And you can see on the at the centre next to the big the lift column there that they had this sort of like machine that just like a giant dinosaur eating into the fabric of the building there. So yeah, so take it on to that next one, Alan. The bridge there. So again, this is another shot you're not be able to take now, because this was taken from the top of the Get Carter car park. And again, I was sort of keen to capture some of these shots that I knew you wouldn't be able to have, never be able to take again, once that building came down. So next one, Alan. Yeah, again, this is one of those shots, again, taken from the top of the car park. I put my telescopic lens on for that, which wasn't the best telescopic lens. So that's the high level bridge. Okay, next one. And again, this is now the Sage and the Millennium Bridge. Or the Millennium +2 bridge. Okay, next one. Yeah, again, so another lost view from the car park. So looking down over the Tyne Bridge. I've got some, I might show it at a future meeting, but that picture that of me as a baby at the start was actually lifted from a video from a cine film that was made back in 1964, which was my dad partly filmed it crossing in the bus crossing the Tyne Bridge as well. So there's all sorts of things in the background which you haven't been there for 50 odd years. So one of these days we'll have a look at that cine film as well. Right, next one. Right, the reason why I put this in is that on the left, that's the tower block in St Cuthbert's Park, and you can see around it most of St Cuthbert's Park has gone.
Apologies.
Yeah, but what is in the background is the other brutalist.
I was trying to highlight the Rocket.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the Rockets. That's thanks, Lee, St Cuthbert's Court. And as you can see, that's a scene in the background which is no longer there, and that is the rocket. But we've got some more photos later on of the rocket. So next one. Yeah, and again, another lost view. So just towards the cathedral and Newcastle Castle. Okay. So next one. And that's what the site is now. That would have been Trinity Square, or pretty close to it. The tower blocks that you mentioned earlier, Alan, are those on the left. It's mainly student accommodation. Not that the students will be coming back for a few months now. Right, next one. Right, this was taken from the car park.
Oh, Shepherds.
Carter car park. But what is it?
That's your Shepherds. Or Shopping City was the one known as. One was being demolished.
Yep, that's the Shepherds of Gateshead, the biggest and the best. Shepherds of Gateshead, so much to see, and the car park is free. Come shopping at Shepherds with the whole family. I sadly still remember that after 50 odd years, so I do need to get a life. But that was advertising. But yeah, that got taken over by Tesco's, who needed it for their car park. So yeah, so time to go.
Jonathan.
Sorry, David.
Shepherds had their own money.
Yes, the Shepherds, the pound, yes, which was traded at about 60p. So
you could buy it on the high street at a cheaper price, you know.
Yes, normally 60. It had an exchange rate of its own, so which was not very favourable. Right. Okay. So next picture. Yeah. Again, so this is just Shepherds of Gateshead coming down. So I think there's another one there as well.
Right.
Right. That's a bit further on. So by then they'd demolished the building, and obviously this area became part of the Tesco's car park. But this is now where the
it's a health centre, isn't it?
The health centre is. So if you take, I think that's the next picture. No, it isn't. Right. So right. Actually, that's a bit of an older picture than the previous one. But yeah, this was more of Shepherds biting the dust. So next one. Yeah, and yeah. So yeah, acquired by Tesco's. So that's it now. So it's the NHS surgery and health centre. So right. Next one. Right. This is the only photograph I've got of Hookergate School. So it closed in, I think it was 2006, 2007. Can't quite remember the exact timing, but it's around about 15, 16 years, well, 13, 14 years ago, it closed. So that is no more. And the next one is another school that has gone the distance. Sorry, no, it isn't. Right. I don't have the notes in front of me, so I'm trying to remember. Right. No, go back. Yeah, right. So, no, back.
One more?
On one. No, go to the soap word.
Okay. That one, or one more?
No. Next one.
Okay,
right. That's it. Yeah, okay. So, this is the Dunstan Soapworks, which was a photograph I took in 1989. And this is when they were at the early stage of developing or reclaiming this area for the National Garden Festival. And there was the Dunstan Soapworks had been closed for some years, but it was quite a revolutionary building, which everybody wanted to have converted into flats, because ideally next to the river. And it would be quite an upmarket development, but it was impossible to convert the building because of the way it was built. At the time, it was sort of these revolutionary concrete slabs that were all sort of slotted together, and they looked at no, I don't remember that one, but I remember Lee, the scrapyard. But I do remember the one under the Redcliffe Bridge, which was actually featured in Get Carter. But anyway, the soapworks ended up, they had to demolish it and sadly so, but they could not get it to work for any other conversion job, so it got demolished, and sadly that is no longer there. Where was the flour works? Wasn't that the Baltic?
That was the Baltic, wasn't it?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Next one.
Oops. Oh, incidentally, Jonathan, I've noted there was similar photographs of the saltworks on the Gateshead Local History Facebook page a couple of months back. I think I shared it on our page.
Yes. I think I remember saying that. Yes. Right. Okay. This is quite a famous tree. Ignore the two people in there. The one who looks
like
pretentious in the blazer is me. The guys, Ming Campbell, who was an MD at the time. But the tree is that big one that's at the top of, or was at the top of Cars Bank at the next to Wickham Highway. And it was a famous tree, and everybody thought that Cromwell and his army kipped out under there before the Battle of Newburn. Unfortunately, the tree came down. I think it was sometime about 2008. So if we moved on to the next one, it gives you a better view of the tree. So again, ignore the two people there. So that's my mum.
Right.
But she was a councillor at the time as well. But you can see the tree in the background there is it was a really big, substantial tree. So if you move it on to the next one, and that's what happened to it. Yeah, it became dangerous. You can see that a lot of it just came down. There was a big storm, and it brought a lot of it down. But they were able to date it by counting its rings, and found it was a lot younger than people thought. So it hadn't been around in the 1600s for the Civil War. It was, I think they dated it to the early 1800s. So it was nearly 200 years old, but it certainly wasn't 400 years old. Unfortunately, it was great big tree, wonderful tree, but it ended its life after that storm. So, okay, next one.
Right. Oops. Hang on. Oops. There you go.
Right. Okay. Again, avoid looking at the two people in the picture. That was probably the last time I had a suit on, back in 2003. In fact, I probably still got the same suit somewhere in my wardrobe. But does anybody recognise?
Sorry, I think I forgot another photograph of you wearing a suit and tie in your archive somewhere.
Right. Okay. Yes. I've got a story about me wearing suit and tie and what people thought of me at the time, but I'll save that for another time. Was it a police station? I can see why you think it looks like a police station, but it wasn't. This was the Edith Brough Children's Home on Grange Lane, and the Edith Brough home was built in the 60s on land that was part of the old, I think it was Wag's house it used to be called, before it was taken over and renamed Edith Brough Home. And it was, the Edith Brough Home was a home for children in the Victorian period or late Victorian and the Edwardian period to have effectively holidays in the countryside, because at that time Wickham was very rural. And it was they gradually sold off the site over the years, so that they were left with just this one corner. And the big house was demolished to make way for what is now Elm Court. But this was sold off in 2003, 2004, and because the children's home had closed. Nowadays, children are sort of cared for in the community, not put into homes. So it did have its time. It's useful. It had outlived its usefulness. So that was demolished, and what you've got now is the next photo.
Yeah, well.
So that's what's there now. So if you go down Wags Lane now, you've got this block of flats called Grange Manor, I think it is.
Yeah.
They, nowadays, when they build new developments, they always seem to call them something Manor or Manor House something, because it seems to, I think it helps sell them. So that's been there for, I think about 13, 14 years now. It's, I think it's about 10 or 11 flats there. So that was the last of that site to be sold off, which had previously been part of the Edith Brough house. Edith Brough, some of you might recognise the name Brough. It's this sort of chain of supermarkets that were sort of quite prevalent in the northeast. And we used to have a Broughs at Lobley Hill. You remember that one?
Gardens.
Yeah, that's So, yeah. Right. Next one. Right. I never. Anybody recognise this? Even though I managed to managed to get the photo just before they finished demolishing it.
It's Sunnyside.
It's Sun Hill. It's Sunnyside Front Street.
Well, it's next to Sun Hill.
Yeah.
It was the old method. Well, what used to be the Sunnyside Methodist Hall, and then the Over 60s Club, and it was demolished 2004, and it was rotten inside. The building was not going to stand up anymore, and if you wanted to keep it, then it was going to cost an absolute arm and a leg to restore it. So there was one of the local builders, I think it was Moody's, bought it and demolished it, and they put 2 houses on it, right on the front street. So Alan, if you, so that's what you have there now, is these 2 houses at the top of Granby Terrace. But you can also see next to it the new Sun Hill, which was opened about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's a very nice development. It's, if you ever looking for somewhere with smaller to live, then it's a really nice development. That. Should we take that one on? Next one, Alan.
Okay.
So this is the old Sun Hill, and it was built in the 60s by Wickham Urban District Council. And on the right is the warden's bungalow, and then on the 2-story building is the home itself. And I think there were 34 flats in there, each just 1 bedroom, and it was also had a flat roof, so it also had all sorts of problems with heating and with not flooding, but with water leaking through the roof and so on. So some of the flats became unusable because of that. The original plan at the council was just to demolish and move out the residents, and demolish it and not do anything with the site. So we put up a bit of a battle, and the council agreed to actually hand the site on to a housing association, who built the new Sun Hill. But if you take it on to the next one, because what
I remember as a lad in the late 50s, early 60s playing football on there. It was a football field, and and I remember getting changed in a little place at the end for some reason, vaguely, because I played football for Morley Hill Juniors, and we came down a couple of times. And we're playing on that particular pitch there.
Was that the Sunnyside Imps by any chance, Dave? Because there's a photograph of the football team in the bar at the Sunnyside Club.
No, this was for Morley Hill Juniors. We had to go down.
I think the Sunnyside Imps were rappers, weren't they? Female rappers.
No, there is a Sunnyside Imps football team. There was a
right,
team as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the whole of that site has now been developed, but when Sun Hill was built, they didn't use the whole of the site. So part of it behind was, well, quite a large part of it was undeveloped. And then they came along and they put in Starling Walk, which is 6 bungalows for people with the special housing needs. And more recently, they built another. They filled the last gap in by building some I think it's 11 of these, what do they call them, townhouses or something like that. They've got these fancy terms for new housing these days. But this photograph is the back of Sun Hill. But you can see they're just starting the work to develop it and to demolish it. So all the Harris frames are gone up around it. And you can see some of the windows have already been removed as well. So next one.
Okay.
Right. So this is the lounge inside Sun Hill. And I often used to go in and play bingo with the ladies there. But I learned the hard way 33 years ago that you never win. If you win, you probably get lynched, but you politely make sure that you don't win at bingo there. So it was always very useful for me to go in, have a few games and make sure I didn't win any of the prizes. So, but they used to have the bingo in the back room there. And we used to have our Sunnyside ward surgeries there as well. And the ladies would always come in and chat with us, and we always had more cups of tea than we could possibly drink. But that's all gone now. So that was flattened as part of the development of.
Yeah, I remember going in there a couple of times because I had a couple of meetings with Marion and John and council surgeries.
Well, we had it was used as a polling station for a while as well, and but after a while, I started to get the feeling that the residents didn't like having their lives disrupted every year for the elections. So, and the council was looking to reduce the number of polling stations. So we had 2 at the time in Gateshead. Neither of them were ideal locations because you had one for the Street Gate and Sunnyside Road area, and that was the Methodist Hall. And for the rest of Sunnyside, it was Sun Hill. So we were disrupting the lives of the Sun Hill residents, and the access to the Methodist Hall is quite difficult right on the main road there with not particularly good parking and so on. So I came up with the idea of moving it to having one polling station and moving it to the Sunnyside Club. So I phoned up the chairman of Sunnyside Club and said, would you be interested? And he said, yes, I'd be very interested, because I said, we'll get lots of people through the door. So that's why we've got the polling station at Sunnyside Club, which helps keep it going. So next one, it's another Sun Hill one. So that was the back, and they had this sunken garden, and that was all demolished as well. And the left-hand side of that picture is now occupied by the new houses that they built behind the new Sun Hill. So next one. Right, I managed to get into Sun Hill. Well, I did get permission to do this because I was invited in, and for a particular reason. I'll explain that in a minute. But I was invited into the inside of the building when they'd finished stripping out everything inside it. So I thought, well, I'll bring the camera along, get a few shots as well. So that's one of the flats upstairs, looking out the back of the building over Starling Walk. So you can see the 2 bungalows there. There's 6 bungalows there in total, and that's the Starling Walk, and that development's less than 20 years old. So next one, Alan. Right, this is the reason why I was actually invited in. That's a feral honeybee colony, and there were 3 of them in the building, in the roof. And I am a beekeeper, so I was invited along to remove the honeybee colonies and see if I could get them to take to new hives, which I put down in somebody's garden down in Wickham, with their permission, I might add. and they were then able to continue with demolishing that area. But they'd stripped out the ceiling boards, which were all full of asbestos. So I was only allowed into the building once they'd actually managed to strip out all the asbestos from the building. So there were 3 honeybee colonies like that. And we also found an enormous and also dead wasp's nest right next door to one of the honeybee colonies. It was the size of a football. You know how the wasps, they make these sort of nests that are almost made from, it's like paper, which is, it really sort of chewed up cellulose and wood fibre and so on. So we found it, and it's the size of a football, and it'd been dead for years. So quite an interesting experience. Right, next one. Right, anybody recognise this?
Is that the Fairmont Hotel?
Yes, do you know what it was?
It is now.
Yeah, so this was 1988. I know we're outside of Gateshead now, but this was 1988. And
Oswald and Northumberland County Council headquarters.
That's right, yes. It was the headquarters of Northumberland County Council, which at first seems rather bizarre that they should have the county council headquarters in Newcastle. In other words, the headquarters of the county council didn't seem to be within the council area. That sounds really odd. But it was, because the castle and its immediate vicinity was legally, before local government reorganisation, it was legally part of Northumberland, because the king, in setting up the town council how many hundreds of years ago, kept control of the castle in royal hands. So it became a parish of Northumberland. So it was the ideal site to build the Northumberland County headquarters. So it was actually built in Northumberland. It's just that if you went to Newcastle Castle, you weren't in Newcastle, you were in Northumberland. And of course that was all swept away with the local government reorganisation in 1974. Right, and if you move on to the next one, and that is, as it is now, the Vermont Hotel. And frankly, it doesn't look like it's changed at all. It looks pretty much the same, other than the fact that they put the Vermont Hotel sign on it. So that, as I say, is as it is now. I did actually go in for a colleague's wedding reception there. I think it was about 2 years ago. So it was nice enough building. So, right, next one. Right, again, this is outside of Gateshead, but not too far. This is in Newcastle, because you'd be able to recognise the spire. It's this was where they were starting to demolish the buildings that were surrounding the town wall behind Central Station. So I managed to get into the site and snap a few photos as they were demolishing it. So if you move it on, another one, Alan. Right. You can see I'd gone from black and white to colour there. This again is immediately behind the Central Station. The old town walls were incorporated into the buildings that went up there. I think it was probably late Victorian or early 20th century buildings, and of course they were all being cleared in the 1980s. So next photo. And that is the town wall as it comes down the bank to the riverside. Again, 1987, so about 33 years, 34 years ago. So next one. And again, just another shot of the walls. And next one, which I'm hoping is going to be as it is. No, it's Still more photos of what it was like. Yeah, I think the next one. Yeah, no, right, okay. Well, actually, that's quite. No, go back. Go back. Right, you look on the right. That building, that's gone now. That's the one that stood on the stilts over Westgate Road.
What? Swan House, wasn't it?
No. Swan House is still there.
That's Fitzroy North, isn't it?
Yeah. I've forgotten what I should have had my notes here. I've forgotten what that building says. Right. Right. Brewery on the site where the casino is. Yeah. Right. Thanks, Lee. Good one. Right. Okay. Next one, which I think we've just caught a glimpse of. So that is the town walls fully restored, and a car park next to it. There are car parks everywhere now. So that is a sort of really magnificent bit of the wall, and it's one of the few bits that's actually from ground level to the top of it. The rest, most of the rest of the wall is not as complete as that.
Jonathan, that was probably Hadrian's Wall, rebuilt.
Yeah. It was, yes. They quarried Hadrian's Wall for as you would have done. It was just 74 miles of dressed stone. So why go and dig up a quarry? So yeah, there's all sorts of. I think there's in Hexham Abbey. There's some of the stone there has clearly come from the Roman wall. In fact, that they actually pointed out to you when you go into the abbey now. Right. Next question.
Next slide.
Sorry, next question. Next slide. I got this right. Right, slightly more off the beaten track and outside the timing of this that we said about these photos. But I started taking photos at an early age. So 1976 down at Marsden, at the age of, I would have been 12 at that point, 12 going on 13. And this is a site that you can't see anymore. So if you move it on one. Yeah, so this was Marsden in 2014. I was taken from the top of the cliffs this time. And to the right-hand side, you would have just been able to, 40 years ago, you would have just been able to glimpse the stack and the arch. But that collapsed, I'm not quite sure when it happened. I think it was maybe around about 2003. So the arch collapsed, and because the stack was so unstable, I think they got the army in to blow it up, sadly. But it's now just Marsden Rock without its famous arch, sadly. Okay, next one. Right, ignore the person who's sitting there. The reason I put this picture up is because of what's in the background. So again, it's another view that you'll never be able to see again. It's the old Bladen, it's Bladen Comprehensive School there, previously Bladen Grammar School. And that was taken in 1997. And Bladen School was closed, I think it was about 2002, 2003, sometime like that. So it's no longer there, but the site has been reused. So next slide. Oh, sorry, right. This is a photograph that was taken in 2002, so the demolition was underway in 2002. So next question, next slide. And that's what's there now. It's the Bladen Health Centre. Which I did have to visit a couple of years ago because I got whacked in the face by a branch that I was chopping from one of my hedges, and we thought it had left some debris in my eye. So I popped down there, and it turned out that it had actually scratched the eye surface. But it felt like there was something there.
I had a toenail removed there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we can. Should we all sort of talk about our medical records as we medical experiences down at the health centre.
Jonathan, Lee has just mentioned that it was a COVID test centre there.
Yeah.
And it is also the Pfizer vaccination centre as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's you got to be careful driving into there now, because there's all sorts of signs sending you off in one direction.
Exactly,
but I did take somebody there a few weeks ago for an appointment. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I drove there and got into the one-way system that pointed people in whichever direction for the COVID testing, and the rest for the health centre. But this was before it was being used as a centre for the injection for vaccination.
Right, okay. Can I just add there quickly? I was in and out there for a COVID test today. Walk in, no booking. I was in and out in 10 minutes.
Right.
So if you've got any symptoms, head down to Bladen.
Right. Okay. Good one. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Right. Okay. Well, this photo was taken in 1986. Obviously, that's from Bladen railway station, which has the grand sum of about 5 trains a day stopping at it. But what was of interest to me was the Stella B. I think it's Stella B power station in the background, and that's all gone. So that was demolished, and I think it's a housing estate now, which was built in the last decade. So about 500 odd houses went onto there. So it's quite a fair size estate now.
And that was the site of the Bladen races.
Oh, I don't know about that. Right. You'd have to ask an expert on the Bladen races, and I'm certainly not an expert on that. So, right. Okay, Alan.
Right. Oops.
Right. As I promised, this is the Dunstan rocket in 2007. When I was first elected back in 1987, so nearly 34 years ago, one of the first bits of casework I had was somebody wanting housing, and this person said that they were very happy to move into the rocket. Or at the time, they were having serious difficulties trying to get people to take out tenancies in the rocket. So I was very easily able to get this person rehoused. So it was my first successful piece of casework I did for my new constituents at that time. But she couldn't vote for me because by moving her into the Dunstan rocket, she was no longer a constituent of mine because I don't represent that area. Right, next question. Sorry, stop saying question. Next slide.
Next slide, you mean?
Yeah. Right, again, ignore this person and look at the background. This was the little zoo that was in Chase Park.
Yeah.
And in 1995, the council had to close it down, or decided to close it down, because for various reasons. Firstly, it looked rather tatty. Secondly, it was costing an awful lot of money to maintain it, and thirdly, it was probably going to fall down. And anyway, we did sort of try to campaign to have it replaced, but we lost on that one. So,
Jonathan, some of us might have been laughing because I just had the chat thing up in regards to the rocket. Apparently, someone's had a sign in the very top window saying "carpet for sale."
Oh. Right, good one. Yes. Yeah, we should collect all these amusing stories because they're all part of our history. So, right. Okay, if you move on to the next slide.
True story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a sad day because that was when they removed the zoo from Chase Park. The animals all went up to Saltwell Park, and this area was they got rid of the old cages, and it's an outdoor gym that's there now, which I don't think I ever photo of, or not on this presentation. So if you move on to the next one, Alan. But that was 25 years ago. This is something else that's gone from Chase Park as well. That's the greenhouses on the back of the buildings there. So they became very dangerous, and that whole area had to be cordoned off. So the greenhouses were then demolished. I think it was about 3 years ago. So they were able to at least open up that area of the park. The sunken Italian garden was there. And they were able to allow public access to it. So it's slightly controversial as to what they want to do with the other building, the remaining buildings. But I'm not going to get political tonight. So we'll move on to the next one. So that's with the greenhouses now removed. I think those house frames have gone as well. So next one. This is the reason I put this one in is it's actually a very recent picture of the windmill in Chase Park, and the assumption that people had was that it was a medieval windmill. But when they were doing the restoration work on it, they had somebody investigate it, and they discovered that it wasn't a medieval windmill. It was actually built in the early 1700s.
Jonathan, there's a date. There's a stone. The date above the door, and the parish shows 1567.
Yes, but the records actually show, and they found the records that they were advertising. This site was sold in the early 1700s, around about 1710, and it was. I think it had in the whatever newspaper they had in Newcastle at the time, they had a picture of this, and it was advertised as recently built or new windmill, and there was a pond. There was a mill pond next to it as well.
The thing is, Jonathan, you can see all the different types of stonework that's gone on there. There's lots of them, isn't there?
Yeah, you can definitely see that once they cleaned up the building. So
yes, yeah.
So yes, and the ground level was reduced down as well. You can just see the tide mark at the bottom of the building.
Yeah, sure.
As well. But yeah, it was a working mill from the 1700s through to the early 1800s. I think it was maybe about 1830 they stopped using it. So it's stood empty since then. Right. Okay. Next question.
Next slide, you mean?
Next slide. Yeah. Right. Okay. The reason I included this is because a lot of this has changed. This was taken in 1987 from the top of Newcastle Tower. Newcastle Castle. And you can see we've got there the multi-storey car park in Gateshead, the Get Carter car park, and you've got between the high level bridge and the Tyne Bridge, and behind the swing bridge there, you can see there's a sort of curves which were part of a sculpture and buildings behind it. And that whole area has now been developed as the location for the Hilton Hotel. But a lot of this has changed, and you've got to the right of the high level bridge, you can just make out was it the Brett Oils site? Well, that's very recently been demolished, and unfortunately I never got around to getting any photos before the demolition work started. But that's going to be housing and flats and offices, and I think maybe more restaurants as well. I think if it's a riverside, then they always build restaurants there anyway. So a lot of that has changed, including right in the background as well. So next slide. Oh, actually, just go back one. So, yeah, right. There on the extreme left, under the Tyne Bridge, it's the Tuxedo Royale. So, which was eventually towed away and taken to Hartlepool, I think it was.
Was Hartlepool, yeah.
Yeah.
Demolished.
And I think it got burnt out. So
Yeah.
So bit of a story to that one. Right. Next one. So this was when they were just starting to prepare the site for building the Hilton, but they did an archaeological review of this site and found some Roman buildings there. Or, well, a bit of evidence for them. There wasn't much, but there was a bit of evidence. Plus various medieval buildings there as well. So this would have been the heart of medieval Gateshead. And Roman coin there as well. Yeah. So if you move that on, one more? What one slide?
Yeah.
Right. So this is when they started building the Hilton, and you can see it's got that sort of familiar curved front to it as well. But the plans allowed for it to go to the height of the top of the Tyne Bridge, but not to be higher. So that was one of the stipulations. At least I think that was one of the stipulations for planning permission for this. So next one. Yeah. So again, that was taken on the same day, so just a different angle. But it was you can see the buildings was getting bigger at that point. So next one. And that was taken much later that year. I think that was probably taken between Christmas and New Year in 2002. And much of the work, or much of the infrastructure of it was approaching completion at that point. Okay, next one. And again, just another shot of the building, this time from Newcastle. But again, I included this one because it's got the Tuxedo Royale. Okay, next one. And that was when it was completed. So well, more than completed, had been around for a few years at this point. So this was taken 2.5 years ago from Newcastle Quayside. Okay, next one. Oh, there was always a bit long running row about what the Hilton should be called, because they wanted to call it the Hilton, the Newcastle Hilton. And of course, we objected strongly on our side, quite rightly so as well. And I think they eventually compromised, and it was called something Newcastle Hilton in Gateshead, so known as the Newcastle Hilton for short. So right. Okay, this was the Gateshead Quays in 1996, and again, this is got a huge number of changes now because you've got the Sage there now, and if you can just make out the Baltic, and you can see that a lot of the building, it's got scaffolding up, and there's a big heap of rubble next to it as well. So they basically gutted the entire building. And then built inside it the art gallery. So that was 1996, and this is due for a lot more changes as well, because this is the site of the new convention centre and conference centre that will be built over the next 2 to 3 years.
You can see the Spillers flour mill in the background there, the white building. Yes,
yeah.
Spillers.
Yep. Okay, so this is where the Sage is now. So again, the part of this was a traveller's site, and the rest of it was just industrial dereliction, I think. And again, we've got the Tuxedo.
Used to be some workshops there.
Yeah. This area would have been quite densely populated during the Victorian period as well. I think a lot of it got damaged when the Great Fire went up. Okay, next slide. Right, so obviously building the Sage underway, and this was in 2002. We were given the opportunity to have a look around inside the building as it was beginning to go up. So what they're building here is that shrink wrap type glass sort of exterior that the building has. this is where they were just sort of starting to build it. So long before the glass went onto it. So next one. So again, that's taken on the same. Most of the sort of ribs that they put over it to hold the glass were in place at that point. Next one. And again, this was the sage taken from the Millennium Bridge. But if you see the pylons in the river, these they've been removed, much to the relief of Gateshead Council.
They were known as Wilson's Piles.
Well, it was the Tyne commissioners. I've forgotten what they're called now. They were called Tyne commissioners 150 years ago, but the Port of Tyne Authority, that was it. They insisted that those pylons go in there, and nobody else really believed that they were necessary. So there was a change of heart at some point. I'm not quite sure when, but they were all very rapidly removed. So they are no longer there. Right, next one. So again, this was a year later, and part of the roof going over, being installed. And this was in 2003, but before the glass was put in. So next one. And again, this is really high up in the building, and it's just under where the roof is. But we're almost at the height of the Tyne Bridge. But you can see these lovely sort of undulating curves on the roof, on those steel beams there. So I think it's a lovely building. It's a wonderful, amazing building. So, right, next one. And that's a bunch of councillors in high-vis jackets standing around looking extremely important. And again, this is before the glass roof went on, but this is on top of, taken from the top of one of the music halls. I'm not quite sure which one it was, but I think it might be the biggest of the three there. Okay, next one. And again, this is just in the inside of the building before it was completed. So still, if you've been in the stage, you'd recognise where that was. So, okay, next one. And again, yeah, just more of the internal building work of the sage. And next one. Right. This is not Ravensworth Castle. I've just realised.
It's turned into a bloody eyesore, though. What they're building now.
Right. I don't use PowerPoint very often, so I couldn't delete the page that was here. So I decided to, instead of deleting the page, I decided to delete the photo that was in it and just reuse the page. So I put in the picture of the Ravensdean Lodge, which was taken shortly before it was demolished in 2019. So it's definitely not Ravensworth Castle, but there was actually on this slide a video of Ravensworth Castle, but I could never get it to play, so I deleted it. And I've obviously forgot to change the headline. This is Ravensworth Castle, cunningly disguised as the former Lobley Hill social club. And if you look on the extreme right, you can see the sort of sloping roof of a house there. And if you go 3 doors along from there to the last house, that was the house I was raised in Lobley Hill. So it was always known as the last house in Gateshead. Actually, this area was actually part of, at the time, or previously it was part of Wycombe Urban District Council. So they part of Concept Road was actually in Wycombe. Wickham Urban District rather than Gateshead. But obviously this has now been demolished. I heard somebody's comment, I think, was that Lee about the eyesore that's gone there, which is an awful lot bigger than the Ravenstein Lodge is. It's I think it's 4 stories now, but it's a sort of residential home for it's the kind of care home that's being built there now. But I remember when it was the social club, and we used to sit outside in the run-up to bonfire night with a guy, and we'd ask for a penny for the guy, and it was quite a profitable activity. I remember once we didn't have enough stuff for a guy, so on Halloween we had our turnips that we used for lanterns in those days rather than pumpkins, but we had our candles that you put inside. So one of my friends dripped lots of wax all over his hand, so we started asking people for penny for the wax hand rather than penny for the guy. So my friend Tony, with his wax hand, was taken into the club, and after a couple of minutes came out with a whole wad of money. So wax hands as well seemed to be quite profitable outside.
Was that going away money, or?
It was spending money. So right, I think that is probably the last photo.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. So but as I say, I've got literally thousands of photos that I've taken over the years. Obviously a lot of it's done for the newsletter that I do politically, but it's also it's ended up being a great collection of historical changes that have happened in the area over the last 30 odd years. So at some point we'll do a sort through and we'll get some of these onto the Society's history, the History Society's website, but also I'll end up giving them copies of all the photos to the Gateshead Local History or Local Studies unit, where they've and they'll all be ready digitalized. So because the sitting gathering dust in envelopes in my filing cabinet or on my PC.
I think you
no use to anyone. The more we can sort of get these into circulation, the better, because it's turned out to be quite an interesting history of our area. So, and we've got loads more stuff. I've got things like hundreds of photos that I took at the National Garden Festival site, and photos of other things that have happened around Gateshead or the region as well. So I just started photographing things at quite a young age, and so never gave up the habit. So there we are. So thank you very much. Hopefully you found that enjoyable and informative.
Jonathan, can I just ask, from a very young age, you like getting your teeth into things? From that very first photograph of chewing something, and you've continued, to try and get your teeth into everything. And you've chewed some dust over the years as well.
I've definitely done that.
Gateshead Council seem to love knocking buildings down as much as the last 2 or 3, with the sage and other things. But you must have you've watched a lifetime of Gateshead being landscaped, and they've knocked Hillhead School down, Bladen School down, Hookergate School down. There's been do you put demolition on your CV?
Well, actually,
go on.
It's interesting what you say about the schools, because obviously if you look at the Lobby Hill area, because that was where I grew up, and the old primary school in the last 30 odd years, the old infant and junior school, that's been demolished and replaced. St John Fisher's Roman Catholic school, that closed and was demolished, and then they ended up putting Emmanuel College on there. So that's all changed. Hillhead, as you point out, was Mr. Wallace. Yeah, Alan was people at that school. So just in terms of the schools in that area, there's been a lot of change. And actually, you can go just a little bit further into Dunstan, the old Dunstan Hill school was closed, and it's still standing there derelict. But just down the road is the new one, and then up in Wickham, you've got the new Front Street School, and the old building is still there.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what will happen to it yet, but it could well be a conversion job. In fact, that's what I think most of us would like to see. At Wickham, what was formerly Wickham Comprehensive, or Wickham School now, that old school has now been flattened, and I got the photos of that just in time on the August bank holiday last year. I got the photos of part demolished.
Marley
then
Hill
go to Marley Hill.
schools.
Marley Hill, yes.
Yeah.
Marley Hill, the old school. When I was consulted as the councillor there by the council about what we prefer to see on the site, my view was, because the school had closed, so we couldn't argue to keep the school open, because when it closed, it only had 12 pupils. But I said, it's quite an historic building, so if we could retain the building and build the houses on the school field behind it, and that's what's happened. So we've got 22 new houses out of that, which we need, and the old school building has been converted into 2 houses. So we kept the old building in place. So that there's, in terms of the schools in the area, there's been a huge change around, which. I haven't really sort of sat down and thought about it, but now that we've sort of gone through it all, there's a huge amount of changes there. And of course, on the slides I was showing, we had Blaydon and Hookagate that have gone as well. So
school,
a lot of changes.
Swan School.
Yeah.
The radiators in the old Marley Hill school were very ornate. I wondered what happened to them.
I don't know. My guess is that they would have been taken over by the developer, who may have incorporated them into the new houses.
Yeah, but they weren't just plain ordinary ones. They were all sort of carved and what have you. Very ornate for a school.
Yeah.
Can you remember keeping your hands warm on them on them cold winter mornings when the snow was about to
No, I'm a Yorkshire lass, but I was a teacher and I used to go in and see certain pupils there. So no, we just, at my primary school, we had an open fire, and if you were at the front, you were warm, but if you were at the back, you were freezing to death, you know.
Well, I remember something the other way around is at Lovely Hill School, and I don't know whether Alan remembers this, but one of the problems with Lovely Hill School was that on one side of some of the classrooms, it was basically a wall of windows. And with the sun came shining through, it became unbearably hot. And we used to use crayons in those days, and you used to melt the crayons on the windowsill. And for some reason, our crayon boxes were always metal tobacco boxes. And of course, if you put your closed crayon box, metal box, on the windowsill with the crayons in it on a really sunny day, it would melt the crayons. So I don't know, was that something that you ever came across, Alan, at Lovely Hill?
I think I've got vague recollections, but I'm not quite sure if the classrooms I tend to be in were more sheltered than the ones you were.
Jonathan, I can remember the school dinners getting brought in a van, and we used to sit at our desks and get our lunch on the desks. We hadn't any dining room. And the school dinners brought in a vehicle, and they had the canister.
Yeah. Well, I used to be the milk monitor at Lobley Hill. When I was in the 4th year. I'm not quite sure where that is now in terms of the. I think it must be year 6 or something like that. It's the last year. It's primary school now, and I used to be the milk monitor. Well, 2 or 3 of us were milk monitors, so it was our job to get to school at 8:30 in the morning, and I had to go to the infant main entrance. We get the milk, and we used to take the crates to the infant children, who I think all got free school milk. But in the junior end, it was only a certain number of children that got the free school milk, who were probably free school meal children. That's my guess. So my job was to basically, it was like being a milkman, to take the bottles of milk around the classrooms. But I was also, for some reason...
Was it ever frozen, Jonathan? Was it ever frozen, the milk?
Yes, yes. And I think I just caught a comment on the chat there. I think sometimes it was a bit warm and off as well, particularly if you'd left it. If you left all the crates in the next to the windows on the on the eastern side of the school.
Did the children use straws?
Yeah, we use straws. Yep. So yeah. All the memories.
Jonathan?
A
third pint bottle or?
Yeah. It was about a third. Yeah. I can't quite think of, because so you probably use glass milk bottles nowadays, because there's not many. You don't get many people delivering it either. So, but yeah, it was. I was the milk monitor at school at Lobley Hill, and I used to. One of the other jobs I had, and I don't know how I managed to get this one, was to go around to get the number of people who were having staying for school dinner that day. So I'd have to go to each classroom, and the teacher would say, "Everybody who's staying for dinner, put your hands up," and they'd count them, and then I had to write it down on a sheet, and then take that to the kitchens to get the so that the schools could prepare, the kitchens could prepare the right number of meals. So. It was fun times had by all. So,
but coming back to schools, Jonathan, Bladen Grammar School, when it was demolished, all the stones were marked and were put into storage. The school just wasn't demolished and put into a skip and taken away. All the stones in the archways of the doors were all marked and carefully stacked somewhere on the oak doors. You know, because it was a fabulous building.
I wonder where they are now.
Storage,
would it go to Beamish, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think it got the Beamish. It just went into storage somewhere for a future building programme.
Yeah, I think given that if they'd gone to Beamish, it would have been nearly 17, 18 years ago. So it was 2002. It was demolished.
Yeah.
So they would have used them by now.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, when the grammar schools come into date, grammar schools, was it after the war, or was the grammar schools before the war?
Before the war.
It was before the war.
In the 1920s, there was grammar schools.
Oh well.
1920s.
Well, I failed the first half, so I didn't have to worry about grammar schools. I couldn't afford a blazer. Your mother couldn't afford a blazer for us.
My mother, who was born in 1910, actually went to Whitby Grammar School, so she'd be in the 1920s. So that gives you a bit of history when they were about 1920, yeah. At least somewhere around there, maybe before. Yeah.
Well, I went to Stanley Grammar School.
Oh, that's nice too.
And
so did I for a while.
I was at Front Street, Stanley, and do you know that on the Front Street there was a big school, And I remember when you used to go into the hall to have a meeting. So we used to get singing, and people would play the piano, the woman would play the piano, and I used to go, oh, I just wanted to get into the lessons, you know.
Was that for morning assembly? For morning assembly, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody did that one night.
We used to march in. Yes. What our best behaviour then? If you used to step out of the lane, you got a clip across the ear.
Yes, yes. There was an upstairs and a downstairs section to the Stanley School.
Upstairs.
And of course, he sat the first half of the exam, and if he passed it, he went to the grammar school for the second.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I remember at Lovely Hill, we had there were two teachers that most of the kids were absolutely terrified of. One was Mr. Dowie, the head teacher, who at the drop of a hat would use the strap on you.
Oh my
and the other one was Mr. Havers.
Yes, I remember Mr. Havers.
Who at the drop of a hat would use the strap on you as well.
Jonathan, true story. I once got the strap for signing. The school team dropped the games teacher dropped the goalkeeper, and somebody's mates tried to get a petition up. I was one of the people who signed it, and I got the strap for it.
Oh,
Right.
Nice.
Maybe they'll just come back on.
I should bear that in mind the next time I run a petition, Steph. I got the strap for running in the corridor, and it was from Mr. Havers. And there were he gave me the strap, but he barely touched me. I think he realised he probably accepted that it was hardly the biggest crime in the school was to go running in the corridor. So it was a slight tap on the hand. Some of the big tough lads had previously had the strap from Mr. Havers, and they'd come back into class, tears in their eyes, rubbing their very sore hands. So when I went back to the class, everybody knew that I had the strap. They were all very impressed by the fact that I was rather blasé. I was like, oh, that really caused me much pain, and I'm not crying. So they're also very impressed by this. Whereas these two other lads had obviously had a real beating from Mr.
What did your father say, Jonathan, when you got home? When you told your father? What did your father say?
They never found out.
I had to behave myself at school because my mother was the head teacher's secretary.
Oh, yeah.
Teacher's secretary.
Right, okay. It's, oh, blimey, I didn't realise it was late as that. It's 10 to 9. Right, so we'll probably call it a day. What we'll do is we'll put the video of this up on...
Do I end the recording now, Jonathan?
Yes, if you could